So, any questions from the morning? Shared. Homework is a shared problem. Coming to school is shared. Coming to school on time is shared. Coming to school well clothed, well fed, well slept is shared. Those are all shared. Did I see a hand? No.
Why did you change from challenging behaviors to concerning behaviors?
Why did we change from challenging behaviors to concerning? Because challenging makes people think primarily of unlucky behaviors, but lucky behaviors are communicating the same thing. They're all concerning. Don't want to give those lucky kids short shrift. They're communicating something too. Other questions?
I was thinking about this idea of posting.
I'm trying to think of how to paraphrase that for the people who are watching by Zoom. So let me paraphrase it this way. Is it uncommon for the folks at home to have somewhat different expectations than the folks at school? Yeah. And that's life, right? Truth is, even what is adaptive at home could be somewhat different than what's adaptive at school. And so part of life is adapting to the differing expectations of different environments. Even in school, the third grade teacher might have different expectations than the fourth. I would expect that, right? So what you're describing is not unusual. Just because a kid is having no difficulty meeting whatever the expectations are at home, doesn't mean you shouldn't have different expectations at school. And if the kid is having difficulty meeting those at school, it's still an unsolved problem. That's it. Good? Shh, go ahead. So the question is, do I ever get any pushback on adaptive versus maladaptive? Not that much on those terms. I could use terms on which I would get more pushback. What's adaptive and maladaptive is defined by whoever's doing the defining. And that's where life starts to get interesting, right? But that doesn't mean that one definition of adaptive is correct and another is incorrect. I think that the variability is actually what makes life interesting. We do have to take it into account and take those differing views into account. But I don't get too much pushback on adaptive and maladaptive. Those tend to be a little bit more benign than other terms that I could use. There you go. Lagging, not great. Adaptive and maladaptive, not that big of a problem. Other questions? Let's keep going. You have 2 one-hour segments this afternoon. 1:15 to 2:15, 2:30 to 3:30. I'm going to give you the 10,000-foot view of the whole problem-solving process. Let me just finish up a few things on things that we have already covered. This slide I will cover tomorrow. The ASIP is a game changer. And now you know I'm not saying that because of a financial interest. It's a game changer. When I am sitting in ASIP meetings, I get a lot of light bulbs going on, a lot of wow moments, as in, wow, you've already heard this one. This kid really does have a lot of unsolved problems. That is a beautiful wow moment, especially when it is uttered from the lips of someone who didn't realize that when they walked into the meeting. Wow, no wonder what we've been doing hadn't been working. Beautiful wow moment, especially when it is uttered from the lips of someone who came into the meeting thinking, we should just hit it harder on what hasn't been working for the last 3 years. This next one often comes with a rather shaken up look attached. Wow, I'm kind of feeling bad about how I've been treating the kid. Now, what's that person all shook up about? Well, they are now simultaneously reflecting on what they now know about the kid and how they've been treating the kid and coming to the recognition that the two do not square up. More wow moments. So you're saying this kid only gets upset when these unsolved problems pop up? That's right. And you're saying these unsolved problems don't pop up. We know they're coming. That's right. Any unsolved problem you've written in on the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems is by definition predictable, or you wouldn't have been able to write it in. And you're saying that if we solve these problems with the kid won't get upset over them anymore? Right. You know what I'm about to say. It's only unsolved problems that cause concerning behavior. Solved problems don't. And you're saying we don't have to wait till they pop up to solve them. We can solve them proactively. Bingo. Now, we have one more task remaining in our ASIP meeting. Does that say ASIP? It does. We have to decide what unsolved problems we're going to start working on first. Because as we've already established, you can't solve them all at once. This is not a one fell swoop model. There is no one fell swoop model. We got to decide what our priorities are. Because if you try solving them all at once, you'll solve nothing. Which ones are we going to start with? Here's your algorithm. Safety first. Any unsolved problem setting in motion safety issues is a high priority. This is a safety first model. They all should be. If we don't have safety issues, we're either going to go with frequency, the unsolved problem setting in motion concerning behavior most often, or gravity, the unsolved problems having the greatest negative impact on this kid's life or the lives of others. How are you keeping track? The second sheet of the model is called the problem-solving plan. Also available on the Lives in a Balance website in an editable, fillable format, also free. What you're seeing on the problem-solving plan is 3 columns, each representing a distinct unsolved problem. Top box in each column, what is the unsolved problem? So this is how we're keeping track, both of what we are working on with this kid right now, that's plan B, there's only room for 3, and by process of elimination, what we are not trying to solve right now, plan C. Notice there's only room for 3. That's your max. Next box is critical. Who's going to take primary responsibility for solving this problem with this kid? We've got to designate somebody. But it's not hard to designate somebody. I can tell you who it's not going to be. Ready? It's not going to be the people who it usually is. It's not going to be the principal, assistant principal, school psychologist, school counselor, school social worker. They are not well positioned to solve problems about which they know nothing. Nope, it's going to be whoever expectation it is that the kid is having difficulty meeting. That's who it should be. They're the only ones really well situated to solve that problem. Who's best situated to help the kid with difficulty completing the double-digit division problems in the worksheet in math? Guaranteed, math teacher, or the para, or the ed tech. How does the principal know anything about that? No, we don't send kids to the principal to solve problems. We send kids to the principal for them to mete out justice because of the kid's concerning behavior. And that explains why this model has quite the stellar track record for eliminating discipline referrals. There are no more discipline referrals. There are problem-solving referrals. This is where you're sending a note to the office for them to help you find coverage. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Why would you send a kid to the office for discipline when the tools that are available as discipline do not solve any problems? Isn't this amazing? Look at all the time we waste on things that have no chance of working. And people are telling me they have no time. Now we know why you have no time. Because of the things we're doing that aren't working. I have a solution to that. Start doing things that are. No detentions, no suspensions, no expulsions. Why are they not doing that stuff anymore? Not because they're allergic, but because it makes no sense. And if only everybody knew that, we'd be in very good shape. The remaining boxes on the problem-solving plan walk us through the 3 steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively and proactively, which we are going to cover in this segment. Once the problem is solved, it comes off the problem-solving plan, and another one arrives from the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems to take its place. This is how we're keeping track. This is how we're keeping it organized. This is how we're keeping kids and problems from slipping through the cracks. 2 sheets, both free.
I like that theory. The logistical side of my brain was going, what do you do in the meantime between identifying problems?
So if I tried to paraphrase that, I don't know if you'll love my paraphrase. How do we stop doing things that are focused on behavior late so that we can start doing things that are focused on problems early? It's not that much of a gap. Yes, problem solving is at the core of this model, but the core to stabilization is expectation management. And you can start doing that tomorrow. So I don't focus much on how can we do things better in the heat of the moment. I focus on how we're going to get you out of the heat of the moment in the first place. That's why expectation management was number 1 on the list. But we'll be covering it in more detail soon. Good. I don't think of it as a gap. I think you can start doing expectation management tomorrow and start stabilizing a lot of kids tomorrow and not miss the things you were doing that weren't working anyways. Question?
Yeah, so you said in the ASAP.
Let me paraphrase. Who gets to pick which unsolved problems are our top priorities? If you think the kid cares, the kid can pick. If you don't think the kid cares, you pick. The reality is, I don't really care where you start. I care that you start. Now, if I'm going to try to be systematic about where I start, I'm going to start with safety, right? So you got the algorithm on the slide before this one, but I don't really care where you start. I care that you start. What's the matter?
It seems like you want students buy-in.
Now, I think I know what you mean by plan. Yeah, no, you haven't come up with any plan yet. All you've done, yeah, but those boxes can't be filled in without the kid.
That's what I was asking.
You don't fill in those boxes until you actually do the problem-solving process.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Once you do the problem-solving process with the kid, then you can fill in the boxes. The problem-solving process is what fills in the boxes. Good. I thought you were asking who gets to pick what the unsolved problems are. No. Whoever. I just care that you start. The kids can be identified in identifying unsolved problems. Generally speaking, I find that adults are pretty good at it, but if you want to check in with the kid by asking them things like, what are you getting in trouble for? What are people giving you a hard time for? That's fine too, just to make sure you didn't miss anything. Shall we keep going? We're ready. You have 3 options for solving problems. They are called Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. What I've done here is I've taken the many different ways in which adults handle problems with kids and I've reduced them to 3 basic options, A, B, C. It provides a very nice shorthand for thinking about how we are currently handling unsolved problems and for thinking about how we might choose to handle them instead. A, B, C. Notice unsolved is underlined at the top. That's because if a problem isn't unsolved, you don't need a plan. It's not an unsolved problem. If a kid is coming to school on time and as often as you'd like them to, you don't need a plan. It's not an unsolved problem. It's a met expectation. No plan needed. Kid is doing their homework as well as as often as you'd like them to. You don't need a plan. It's not an unsolved problem. It's a met expectation. No plan needed. It's not uncommon for me to feel need to point out to adults that even kids who are extremely challenging are meeting more expectations than they're not. That often gets lost in the shuffle. This kid, there are expectations this kid is actually meeting. They only look like they have oppositional defiant disorder when there are expectations they're having difficulty meeting. So how can that be a disorder if you only have it part-time? I guess it couldn't be. Part-time oppositional defiant disorder? Seriously? What an interesting diagnosis. If a problem isn't unsolved, you don't need one of these plans. All right, let's dive into the plans, then we'll go deeper. I'm going to start with Plan C. Plan C is your expectation management plan. This is where you are putting unsolved problems on hold, at least for now. Many people hear that and they think, instantaneously think, giving in. There's no giving in the entire model. Giving up, there's no giving up in the entire model. Prioritizing, there definitely is prioritizing in this model. Plan C is what you're doing with the unsolved problems. You have consciously, deliberately, and best of all, proactively decided, we're not going to try to solve that one now. We got bigger fish to fry. Actually, we got bigger fish to fry is one reason you would use Plan C. Here's another. You think the expectation is out of range for this kid at this point in their development. Those are the 2 reasons you'd use Plan C. You've got bigger fish to fry. It's not a high priority right now. And you can't solve everything at once. Or you think this expectation is out of range for now, not forever. How do you decide whether it's out of range? Judgment call. I'll leave that to your judgment. But I've got an imperfect algorithm for you. This is not perfect. If the kid can sometimes meet the expectation, it's probably in range. If the kid can never meet the expectation, it's probably out of range. Imperfect, but good enough. It's a judgment call. Worst case scenario, you're wrong. How would I rather be wrong? I'd rather not put expectations on kids that they can meet than put expectations on kids that they can't. One is more damaging than the other. And in this model, especially when it comes to expectation management, as I was telling these 2 parents this morning, we are in crisis prevention mode. When your kid loses it, that is the absolute worst thing that happens in your family. Nothing's worse than that. As the parents were saying, you know, we had to, we are keeping our 2 boys away from each other right now because they can't get along. That's 80% of this one kid's explosions. My recommendation, I guess we're Plan C'ing it. There's no expectation that they play together right now, right? And the number of explosions plummets, right? I know that wasn't your vision of what your family was going to be like, but it also wasn't your vision to have a kid with emotions that are this big. So that's the hand you've been dealt. Let's be responsive to it. That's your life right now. I said in 3 months, your life could be different. But right now, this is your life. I'm going to take your life as it currently exists. I also, because I've done this thousands of times, think I have a pretty good idea of what your life is going to look like in 3 months, but it doesn't look like that now. We're stuck with what you got now. What they're holding against me is the fact that they've worked with countless other mental health professionals before me, none of whom has ever done them a whit of good. So they've been told, give us 3 months before. That's why me saying it doesn't hold quite as much weight. That's plan C. Now, us caregivers, we're not accustomed to removing expectations. We're accustomed to loading kids up with expectations. We think that's our job. So this is, plan C can be a little dicey for caregivers who are accustomed to loading kids up. Let me help caregivers feel better about that by telling them the following. The kid isn't meeting the expectation anyway. I'll repeat that just for emphasis. The kid isn't meeting the expectation anyway. So now you got two choices. You could keep putting the expectation on the kid that you know the kid can't meet, cause concerning behavior, and all that goes along with it, including time, or make it official. We don't even want you to meet that expectation right now. We don't want you to. It's off the radar screen. I know which one I'd pick. That's plan C. More on plan C soon. That leaves us with only two other plans, A and B. Both represent a way to solve a problem with a kid. Just one massive difference between them. With plan A, you're solving the problem unilaterally. With plan B, you're solving the problem collaboratively. I think you know which one you're using in this model, but does that mean we are allergic to plan A in this model? Not allergic, we just don't think it's a very good idea. But if a kid's about to dart in front of a speeding car in a parking lot, you're not using plan C. You're not saying to yourself, you know, I got bigger fish to fry here, so. You're not doing B, you're too late. I've noticed you're doing plan A. You yank on the kid's arm, you save the kid's life. If the kid loses it, so be it. But if 3 weeks later the kid has now darted in front of a speeding car in a parking lot 17 additional times, and you've yanked 17 additional times, yes, I would be the first to agree. Yanking is working at saving the kid's life. But yanking is clearly not working at solving this problem. You are going to need a different plan. And if you decide, I don't even think this kid is capable of being safe in parking lots at this point in their development, and there are kids like that. Or this is not a high priority. You're going to do plan C, and that kid's not going to find themselves in a parking lot anytime soon. If you decide, no, well, this needs to be a priority, it's safety, or I do think this kid, if we work on this, can master this. If we solve this problem, you're going to do plan B. The problem with plan A is not that we sometimes use it. The problem with plan A is that we use it a lot, even when it's clearly not working. That's the problem with plan A. I am going to skip plan A because I think you know what it looks like, and I don't think there's anything that critical on this slide. We might cover it tomorrow, maybe not. But I do want to cover this. I love this. Are antecedent interventions plan A? Well, whenever anybody asks that question, I ask them, tell me what you mean by an antecedent intervention. All right, let's put this to the test. Well, things like modifying the environment to make it less aversive. Well, how do you know the environment is aversive? Or is that something we just plunged into without asking the kid? Changing task demands to make them easier, shorter, and less aversive. How do you know that it needs to be made easier, shorter, or less aversive if you haven't asked the kid? Incorporating student interest and preferences. How do you know that's what's going to address whatever's really getting in the kid's way if you haven't asked the kid? Are antecedent interventions plan A? Yes, because you haven't asked the kid. These are solutions we come up with based on our theories about what's getting in the kid's way. Best intentions, let there be no doubt. Theories are driving those interventions. By the way, here's my favorite, but really least favorite. One of the things I see people routinely jump to when a kid is having difficulty completing a certain academic task is the immediate intervention is, well, let's just cut the number of items in half. Okay, so he's got to do 5 instead of 10. Yes? There's only one issue that would address. There's too many. Anything else that could be getting in the kid's way of completing 5 or 10 would not be addressed by making it 5 instead of 10. Am I making sense? Now we got to cover this. Plan C. Let's just go into a little bit more detail. As you already know, this is where you're putting the expectation on hold, at least for now. You already know it's not about giving in or giving up. It's about prioritizing. Or, and I heard you use this word, but I don't hear this word that often in schools. I would love to hear it more often. Triaging. Triaging is a word I hear like in emergency rooms, right? Okay, close enough, right? But if I arrived at the emergency room with, let's think, a dislocated shoulder, an ingrown toenail, and I was in cardiac arrest, do I hope they know which one to start with? I do. Schools need to do more triaging. But the synonym for triaging is prioritizing. We are so hell-bent on teaching, we sometimes make it worse. And the Hippocratic oath is don't make it worse. Very interesting stuff. Once again, Plan C is about expectation management, not behavior management. The more expectation management you do, the less behavior management you'll have to do. And you already know what unsolved problems would go into Plan C. The ones that are low priorities are the ones that you think are out of range, at least for now. And that's your judgment call. You could be wrong. Okay. There are 2 forms of Plan C, proactive and emergent. Which form of Plan C should you be using 99.9% of the time? Proactive, because you already did the ASIP, you already did the problem-solving plan, you decided up front which ones you're trying to solve, you already decided up front which ones you're putting on hold. 99.9% of the time, proactive Plan C. And here's the deal. We were talking about this a little at lunch. If that's what we were doing, we wouldn't have to spend very much time helping kids start to recognize when their body is telling them they're starting to get aroused. That's not pointless, but we do it too much because it's us trying to stick with the status quo. We're still putting all the same demands on the kid, but now we're teaching them to recognize when they're starting to get activated. We're teaching adults to recognize when the kid is starting to get activated. We missed the point. Those 99.9% of the time, those should have been removed in the first place, at least for now. Now think about how much time we spend teaching kids that stuff. Think about how much time some very prominent figures in the trauma field have been focused primarily on what triggers and what it feels like to have a trauma response. I think that's late. Not irrelevant, not pointless, but late. And we spend a lot of time on that. I don't think that's time well spent. It's fine, but it's not our best way to go. Proactive Plan C has 2 forms. Here's proactive Plan C at 8 o'clock at night, when the parents would normally announce to the kid that it's time to brush their teeth before going to bed. But if that expectation has been removed for now, put on hold for now, here's what it would sound like at 8 o'clock at night when the parent would normally tell the kid to go brush their teeth. Here it goes. This is Plan C. That was it. Don't bring it up. Here's what it would not sound like. This is an example of what not to do. Well, it's 8 o'clock. This is when I would normally tell you to go brush your teeth. I'm telling you to go brush your teeth. Would I like it if you brush your teeth? I would love it if you would brush your teeth. But not only is that plan A, it's annoying, right? It's almost double A. A as in the form of A, and A as in the form of annoying, right? That's not plan C. You know what plan C is. Don't bring it up. But if you're in a school classroom, not bringing it up may not be feasible. So what you're going to do instead is come up with what we might call an interim plan. Notice I didn't say solution, an interim plan for what the kid is going to be doing while that expectation is removed. It's a plan between you and the kid. Here's what that might sound like. Buddy, you know how we've been working on a few things with you lately? We've been working on the difficulty you've been having sitting next to Susie during circle time. We've been working on the difficulty you've been having agreeing with Billy on the rules of the Foursquare game at recess. We've been working on the difficulty you've been having getting along with Trevor on the school bus in the morning. That's your magic number. I'm thinking, if we tried helping you with that social studies project that you fell behind on, it'd be too much. How about you don't got to work on the social studies project? How about me and you figure out what you're going to be doing during social studies while the rest of the class is working on their projects, and then we'll get back to the social studies project just as soon as we get some of these other ones solved. That's an interim plan. And I should let you know, those of you who are in classrooms, you do this already. You just don't call it Plan C. You call it something else, but you do this already. That's Plan C. But that's proactive Plan C. That's preferred. But let's say you should slip and find yourself in the heat of the moment. What would emergency Plan C sound like? Here we go. Class, it's time to get to work on your social studies projects. Some people think that's Plan A. That's actually no plan. That's just the classroom teacher announcing an expectation to the class. No plan yet. I'm not doing my social studies project, comes a voice from the back of the classroom. Now we have an unmet expectation. That classroom teacher, this is actually a true story, has three options, A, B, C. Unfortunately, she chose A, which ultimately resulted in the kid being suspended for 3 days. I should also let you know that I later found out this kid hadn't gotten to work on the social studies project in 3 weeks. So now we have to explain, why are we stuck in the heat of the moment again on an expectation this kid hasn't met in 3 weeks? Got to explain that to me. That's the part we got to explain, right? Because it should be either C or B. And now another mantra. I told you some more mantras are coming your way. Have y'all done the ASIP on that kid yet? I guess not. Otherwise, you wouldn't have found yourself in the heat of the moment again. Have y'all done the ASIP on that kid yet? I'm asking that question frequently. I already know the answer. The information I'm getting before then tells me the answer. By the way, here's how I know they haven't done the ASIP on the kid yet. When they tell me things like, this kid is a puzzle. Interesting. Doesn't he have like 8 diagnoses already? Yes. And you're still saying he's a puzzle? Yes, he's a puzzle. Well, then I guess those 8 diagnoses didn't really clear things up for you, did they? This kid is a mystery. Have y'all done the ASIP on that kid yet? Because this kid's not a puzzle or a mystery. If y'all had done the ASIP on that kid. Am I making sense? Just like to check in. But here's the emergency. Let's say she had chosen Plan C. Class, it's time to get to work on your social studies projects. I'm not doing my social studies project. Emergency Plan C. Okay. Okay? Yeah, okay. Okay forever? No, okay for now. Okay for everybody? No, okay for him now. Isn't everybody going to have some questions about that? I certainly hope so, because that would give us the opportunity to answer those questions. Questions classmates and siblings, as in the case of the family I was talking to this morning, and other adults in the building have about the fair does not mean equal principle? They're in a classroom in Washington State where fair means equal. In every classroom in Washington State, somebody's getting something somebody else isn't getting. Know what that's called? Good teaching. It's also called special education law. It's also called differentiated instruction. It's also called personalized learning, stuff we do all the time without calling it Plan C. They're in a household in Washington State where fair means equal. In every household in Washington State, somebody's getting something somebody else isn't getting. That's called good parenting. My kids, 26 and 23 years old, very similar in some ways and completely different in others. If I had been busy bending over backwards to make sure I was treating each of them exactly the same, neither of them would be getting what they needed from me. Nope, that's not good teaching. That's not good parenting. That's equality. And you're not shooting for equality. You're shooting for equity, a term used in many different ways these days. My definition of equity: meeting every kid where they're at, making sure every kid gets what they need, being responsive to the hand you've been dealt. You are not shooting for equality. I don't know who came up with that idea. You're shooting for equity. And if some kids do notice inequities. They notice when people are being treated differently, and that is good if we manage it the right way. So if a kid approaches us in the classroom and says something like, they don't say, how come fair doesn't mean equal? Here's how they ask. How come I got to do my social studies project and he doesn't? We're ready. We're excited. We've been waiting for this moment. We've planned for it. Oh, because he's having trouble with his social studies project and you're not. What if I start to have trouble with my social studies project? Well, then I would help you with it. But are you having trouble with your social studies project? No, I didn't think so. You don't usually have trouble with your social studies projects. You usually have trouble in math, which is why we make sure you get the help that you need in math. He's having trouble with the social studies project. That's why we're helping him with that. So I got to do my social studies project? I'm having trouble thinking of any reason why you wouldn't. Meeting every kid where they're at is the definition of good teaching and good parenting. I'm working on a Washington Post editorial, and that's the main point. There are so many things we do in schools these days that we think help us meet kids where they're at. IEPs, all the strategies I mentioned this morning. But if you're doing those things without input from the kid, you may not be doing them at all because you don't know where the kid is at, because the kid's voice has not been heard. Any questions about Plan C? It's big. Oh, by the way, in the case of very unstable kids, we've talked about this already, but let's cover it a little bit more. In the case of kids who are very unstable, Plan C is not just about prioritizing, it's about stabilizing. Because any expectation you have removed from the kid's radar screen won't cause concerning behavior. Which would I rather use to stabilize a kid? An atypical antipsychotic medication or Plan C? Definitely Plan C. It has no side effects. Are there kids who are going to need medicine for stabilization purposes, even when we're doing Plan B and Plan C? Yes. But I would like to think there'd be a whole lot fewer of them if a whole lot more caregivers knew about Plan C. Any questions about Plan C? You guys are being very quiet. I don't think it's quite time for the after lunch lull. You've got 5 minutes before then. Go ahead. Let me paraphrase. What do I think of classroom teachers who have multiple kids in the classroom a given, who all have a somewhat different plan. Welcome to Education 2024. What do I think about it? I think it's a beautiful thing. How manageable is it? How well have people been trained to do it? That's a different story. But that is Education 2024, and we just got to make sure that people are good at it. A lot of classrooms do have more than one adult in them. That helps. Some don't. I was taking a survey from EdWeek. Where was I doing this? Might have been on an airplane. I was taking an EdWeek survey, and I was asking what the average teacher-student ratio is in American classrooms. Want to take the quiz? I got it wrong. Ready? They didn't specify. Guess this is an average. 16 to 1, 20 to 1, 25 to 1, or 30 to 1. 16 to 1. I'm just telling you what the survey said. I don't know how they did it. All I know is I was sitting there saying to myself, where do you live? Anyways, any other questions about Plan C? And by the way, you do have another option. Instead of treating every kid differently, which I think is a time saver, but does require planning, intentionality, why don't we try treating every kid the same? Big time suck. Meeting nobody's needs is the biggest time suck there is. Other questions? How do you maintain the dignity of the kid who has expectations being removed? Or let me put it a different way, who's being treated differently? Ready? You're treating everybody differently. So you're not singling anybody out. This benefits everybody, right? Nobody's getting what everybody's getting. Even if a kid is being given harder work than everybody else, you're still treating them differently. We're not singling them out, right? So the kids who get singled out are the ones who have concerning behaviors, but when fair does not mean equal and everybody's getting what they need, nobody's being singled out. And that is a lesson that can be taught and modeled and practiced every minute of every school day on every piece of curriculum. That requires intentionality, it requires planning, and it's what we should be doing. And then nobody's being singled out. Everybody's getting what they need. And kids start to say that. So the singling out part, I think, has more to do with us caregivers than it does with the kids. They've got fair does not mean equal. Kids notice when we're doing something to another student that they know is not going to work. We do not pick up any credibility by treating everybody exactly the same. We lose credibility because the kids who are doing generally fine, who still have something to work on, are sitting there thinking, you guys got to be kidding. You're still doing that to that kid? That hadn't worked in 3 years. That kid's been in my class 3 years. You haven't made me feel any safer. Y'all are still doing the same thing. Could y'all get a clue? That's what they're sitting there thinking. Their parents might be a different story, but maybe the kids will go home and teach their parents something. All right, ready? This is the rest of your day. There are 3 steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively. They are called the empathy step, the define adult concern step, and the invitation step. As I always say, the names of the steps don't matter that much. The ingredients matter a lot. What's the main ingredient of the empathy step? Information gathering. Gathering information from the kid so as to understand what's making it hard for the kid to meet a particular expectation. As I'm always telling people, be prepared for jaw-dropping moments in the empathy step when you discover that what you thought was getting in the kid's way is not what's getting in the kid's way. Let me give you an example from a home story, but I think you will appreciate its relevance to schools. I'm doing this podcast with this father who did father podcasts. This was like 5 years ago. And he was telling me about his 3-year-old daughter, who, as fate would have it, was having difficulty brushing her teeth before going to bed at night. He's telling me this, though. He's telling me he thought he already knew what was making it hard for his daughter to brush her teeth before going to bed at night. He was positive it was the taste of the toothpaste. So he's telling me this story. 7 to 8 different flavors of toothpaste later, his 3-year-old daughter is still having difficulty brushing her teeth before going to bed at night. So he says to me, so I finally did plan B. I'm thinking, you finally did plan B? And you're telling me plan B takes a long time? You're 7 to 8 different tubes of toothpaste in here, friend. The empathy step begins with the words, this will become very familiar to you, some know it already. I've noticed that. I've noticed that you've been having difficulty brushing your teeth before going to bed at night. What's up? 3 years old? She said, when you brush my teeth with the electric toothbrush, it gets water all over my face, and I hate getting water all over my face when you're brushing my teeth. I said to the father, well, now there's a concern 7 to 8 different flavors of toothpaste would never address. I hope you're recognizing the relevance for schools. Define adult concern step. This is where the adult is entering their concern into consideration on the same unsolved problem. The very same concern you might have tried to address previously with plan A is now getting addressed with plan B. Same concern. Completely different approach to getting it addressed. My concern is that if we don't brush your teeth before you go to bed at night, you could get cavities. And it kind of hurts to get cavities filled, and to tell you the truth, I'd rather not spend the money if I don't have to. 2 sets of concerns are now on the table. No turning back now. Time for the invitation. The invitation is where kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution. But as you will hear me repeating multiple times between now and the end of the day tomorrow, a solution that must meet 2 criteria. It's got to be realistic, meaning both parties can truly do what they're agreeing to do. Not wishful thinking, realistic. And even more importantly, number 2, the solution has to be mutually satisfactory, meaning it truly addresses the concerns of both parties. Here's what I've been saying a lot lately, and it's not just my work with thousands of kids that bears me out on it, it's world history that bears me out on it, including current world history. If the solution is not realistic and mutually satisfactory, I promise you this problem is still unsolved. Guaranteed. Here's what the invitation sounded like with the 3-year-old. So I wonder if there's a way, that's how the invitation always starts, I wonder if there's a way for us to make sure we don't get water all over your face when I'm brushing your teeth with the electric toothbrush, that was her concern, and also make sure you don't get cavities, because it kind of hurts to get cavities filled, and I'd rather not have to spend the money. You are then giving the kid the first crack at the solution. Not because it's the kid's job to solve the problem, it's y'all's job to solve the problem. Y'all are partners, y'all are teammates. It's very good strategy, though. It lets the kid know beyond a shadow of a doubt you're actually interested in their ideas. You got any ideas? She did. They usually do. She said, could we wrap a towel around my face when we're brushing my teeth with the electric toothbrush at night, and then I wouldn't get water on my face and I also wouldn't get cavities? Who won? Both. Who lost? Nobody. Whose authority was undermined? Nobody's. That father was being a whole lot more of an authority figure than he was being when he was ramming that electric toothbrush down his daughter's mouth. Those are your 3 steps. In the few minutes that we have before our break, can you believe it? It's almost time for a break. We're going to watch a video when we come back let me cover a few more things to set the stage for the video. Let's dive into the empathy step a little. As you already know, the empathy step is where you are gathering information from the kid about what's making it hard for them to meet a particular expectation. And we'll be talking about non-speaking kids either after the video or tomorrow, and reluctant talkers either, well, that's probably tomorrow. As you already know, the empathy step begins with an introduction. The introduction starts with the words, "I've noticed that," and ends with the words, "What's up?" In between, you are inserting the very well-worded, fingers crossed, unsolved problem that you meant to be talking with the kid about. Now it becomes crystal clear why we're going to spend time tomorrow morning practicing this. Here's what it would sound like if you worded your unsolved problems well, according to the guidelines. I've noticed you've been having difficulty agreeing with Billy on the rules of the Foursquare game at recess. What's up? I've noticed you've been having difficulty sitting next to Susie during circle time. What's up? I've noticed you've been having trouble coming to school. What's up? I've noticed that. Insert well-worded unsolved problem. What's up? But here's what it would sound like if you did not word your unsolved problems according to the guidelines. Here's what it would sound like if you threw concerning behavior at the kid. I've noticed you hit people. What's up? There in one sentence, you've just asked the kid about the 37 different unsolved problems they respond to with hitting. Too much for the kid to answer. You also just threw the kid's concerning behavior at them. Once again, they're going to think they're in trouble. They're going to become defensive. They're out. Here's what it would sound like if you threw a theory at the kid, and I know no one would ever say this, but it's a funny way of making the point. I've heard that you were conceived out of wedlock. What's up? I've heard that you were exposed to substances in utero. What was that like for you? Here's what it would sound like if you clumped it. I've heard you have difficulty following directions. What's up? I don't know. I've heard you have difficulty being safe. What's up? I don't know. Stick with the guidelines. After you say, we'll practice tomorrow. After you say what's up, one of 5 things is going to happen next. And it really is one of these 5 things that's going to happen next. I don't like being reductionistic, but these are your 5. Posse number 1, the kid's going to say something. Posse number 2, the kid's going to say nothing, or I don't know. Posse number 3, this drives people crazy. The kid's going to say something like, I don't have a problem with that, or I don't care. Posse number 4, the kid's going to say, I don't want to talk about it right now. And posse number 5, the kid's going to get defensive and say something like, I don't have to talk to you, or worse. There you have them, the basic 5. I don't know if we'll get to the second one today, but we're going to cover the first for sure. What if the kid, in response to what's up, says something? Whatever the kid says first is not going to give you the clearest possible understanding of what's making it hard for the kid to meet the expectation, which means you're going to have to probe for more information. A process, some of you know this already, we call drilling. Drilling for information. And let there be no doubt, drilling is without question the hardest part of doing all of Plan B. If you master drilling, you have mastered the hardest part of Plan B. Not that the invitation's a walk in the park, but if you master drilling, you are over the biggest hurdle. As I always say, it's where most ships run aground. It's where most captains abandon ship. Mostly because we didn't know what to say. Well, up on the screen right now, as well as on the drilling cheat sheet in one of your 2 handout packets, are 8 drilling strategies. So you'll never not know what to say. Let me cover them, then we'll take our break, then we'll watch our first video of the day, so I can finally stop talking at you. I will have now explained enough for you to start seeing this actually happening. I'm going to cover 4 drilling strategies right now. These are the 4 you're going to see in the video I'm going to show you when we come back from our break. 3 of the ones I'm about to cover, number 1, number 2, and number 8, are your top 3 drilling strategies, meaning they're the ones you're going to be using the most. 1, 2, and 8. Let me cover those first. Then I'm going to cover number 6, not because you're going to be using it a lot, because it's actually probably the one that you're going to be using the least, but because you're going to see it in the video that I'm going to show you when we come back from our break. Strategy number 1 is your default drilling strategy. The one you're going to be using the most, the one you use when you don't know which one to use, reflective listening. Mirroring. Simply saying back to the kid whatever the kid just said to you, often accompanied by a clarifying question or statement. They are not up on the screen, but they are on the drilling cheat sheet, like, how so? Or, I don't quite understand. Or, can you say more about that? Or, I'm confused. Let's practice. I'm going to present an unsolved problem to the kid. Then I'm going to be the kid, and then you do reflective listening. Ready? I've noticed you've been having, I hate to beat this one to death, but I've noticed you've been having difficulty completing the double-digit division problems on the worksheet in math. What's up? I hate it. Reflective listening. That's it. That's it. You hate it. Don't do it as a question. You hate it? That's going to sound like you don't believe the kid. And please don't act like a psychologist. Don't say, what I hear you saying is, whenever somebody says to me, what I hear you saying is, I feel like poking their eyes out. Just say back to the kid whatever the kid just said to you. I hate it. You hate it. Good, let's keep going. I'm confused. What do you mean when you say you hate it? It's stupid. Reflective listening. That's it. It's stupid. I'm sorry, I still don't understand what you mean. What do you mean when you say it's stupid? It's stupid how you make me do math I don't know how to do. Are we starting to get some traction here? We are. And all we did was reflective listening twice. It's your default. That's the one. Real quickly, the other 2. Strategy number 2, asking W questions. Who, what, where, when. I try hard not to ask kids why either. I find that when I ask kids why, I get something back that an adult has told them before. Case in point, I was working with this little 4-year-old girl, must have been 35 years ago, before I stopped asking why and before I stopped asking kids about their concerning behavior. I said to her, why do you do these things you do? 4 years old, she said, I do it for negative reinforcement. True story. I'm thinking to myself, most adults don't actually know the true meaning of negative reinforcement. I can promise you most 4-year-olds don't. So I pulled a strategy out. Whenever I hear something sketchy, I ask, what does that mean? She said, I don't know. I said, who told you that? She said, my dad. And there you have it. It's meaningless. Strategy number 8, summarizing and asking for more. This is where you are recapping the concerns you've heard so far, and you're asking for more. And here's the deal. There's going to be more. So you're going to be summarizing and asking for more multiple times in every empathy step before there's no more. And when there's no more, the empathy step is done. Strategy number 6, seldom used, the discrepant observation, but you're going to see it in the video right at the very beginning. A discrepant observation is where you're making an observation that differs from things the kid has been telling you. It is your riskiest drilling strategy because some kids, especially the one you're about to meet, interpret a discrepant observation as an indication that you believe that they are lying. You do not believe that they are lying. They're entitled to their reality. It's just that your reality is different from their reality. That's a discrepant observation. And you will see that Andrea doesn't take real kindly to it. Bobby, who you'll meet tomorrow, couldn't care less. We will meet Andrea when we come back in 15 minutes. See you soon.